you actually look at the data and then...
You know, people ask me this all the time, and I honestly can't give you a straight, simple answer. When I create a series like this, and not exaggerating too much, in fact, trying not to exaggerate at all, I probably spent 1.5 years on this, maybe 2 years. No, not straight. I had other things going on too, but over 2 years. As I was putting things together, either new papers came out or I found papers that I didn't know about previously. So I was constantly modifying things and so forth. There are a number of models for these various parts that I can follow and feel pretty good about. I like the idea of these two oceans and the one supercontinent between them for Variscan. But can I say that the people, it's a famous German geologist, I can't think of his name, who has the paper with the single, this guy's a very well-known geologist, and he explains the various suture zones as post-collisional, sort of like what's happened to Southern California over the last 20 million years. We've moved blocks all over the place.
Yeah, but about regarding that, there are really large uncertainties.
Oh, there are. And so basically that paper that did the one Variscan Europe, or the 2 blocks, 1 ocean model, came out as I was finishing this series. Just because a new paper comes out, just because it's a famous geologist, I haven't seen the comments on that paper. They're probably in the literature now. Again, I did this about 2012 or something like that, 2013. And so some of those papers were, are probably still coming out as we speak. And that's another massive chore, is keeping track of the geologic literature and making sure I don't leave out a completely obvious paper that, and I'm sure I have. There are important papers that I either hadn't known about or at least hadn't known about when I finished these maps. I am seriously thinking of redoing this series because there's a new model. Well, it's not new, but it's a coherent model from the Triassic to the recent of the assembly of Southern and Eastern Europe. Italian geologist by the name of Schettino, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And it's a very coherent step-by-step series of blocks that show what all these various Austro-Alpine terrains did through time and so forth. And he's one of the people that doesn't believe in this Pindus Ocean. He thinks, there was a little opening, but there was no big ocean in what we call the Pindus Ocean. So if I were to revise this, I would probably follow his model because it's very, very coherent. So let's say I find a good series of papers that deal with the Permian to the Jurassic. Okay, and they really step out, bang, bang, how Taurus broke off and what parts of Turkey were over there and what parts of Turkey yet have to cross the Tethys Sea and so forth. So I follow these papers, and then, but that paper ends, let's say, in the late Jurassic. Well, now I have to go to the Cretaceous. So now I'm looking at another series of papers, and maybe they don't cover the earlier Jurassic, or maybe they cover the earlier Jurassic, but they present a completely different model for it. You see, so I like to think that I have a good intuition of geology. I don't know why I have it, but I just tend to have a good intuition of what seems likely. That doesn't sound very scientific, but you sort of have to rely on intuition when you're deciding between 5 or 6 models that agree partway, and then come to a point between the 2 models where there's total disagreement. And now, how am I going to plug those two together. So that's by far the most time-consuming, well, I shouldn't say the most time-consuming, but the most difficult thought process of this whole thing. Very, very few papers will take a large region like Europe or North America or Eastern Asia or whatever, South America, and follow it all the way through. South America is particularly problematic. There's a lot of detailed papers of South America that deal with great detail of the stratigraphy and the basins and where they were and so forth, but don't do much with the tectonics. And then there's a series of papers that deal with the tectonics, and those papers don't necessarily agree with each other with the simple paleo maps that they show in those two different groups of workers, the said workers versus the tectonic workers. And so now they don't, well, I don't know much about South America. I really don't. I mean, of all the continents, I probably know less about South America than I'm glad you didn't ask me to do a South American talk. It would have been very general. But South America, I am unaware of any paper that takes, let's say, Paleozoic South America and goes through step by step by step. There's 4 or 5 papers that do that for Europe. And partly because several of them had the same co-author, the famous Ziegler, who really has, that's somebody that I really admire. I have no idea if he's still alive, but oh man, I follow his facies models and his tectonic models basically from the Devonian all the way through. They're excellent papers to follow. He doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of some of the complicated tectonics, but that gives me a model to sort of follow for long periods of time, at least in terms of where the basins were and the basic components were. I don't know of anything like that for South America. There are some things for Australia. That's not too bad. Africa, sort of the same problem as South America. Certain areas are really detailed, mainly where the oil drilling has been. There's lots and lots of information on North Africa, the Niger Delta region, and so forth. But some of the other parts of Africa, there's not an awful lot. At least coherent. There's detailed papers that talk about a certain volcano or a certain fault zone or whatever. That doesn't help me an awful lot. If I looked at every paper that dealt with that, I'd never get a map made. If I looked at every single little detailed fault paper and every single volcano paper and tried, I'd never get anywhere. I have to have things put together. If there's other questions, you might be able to catch Ron after, but let's